There was a man born in Chicago in 1902, and he later went on to create one of the most revolutionary approaches in therapy that you can use on your day to day life. Only 5 years after his birth, he could actually read. In this video, I'm going to briefly discuss the amazing effects this theory, this little approach had in my own communication and people skills. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to use it for yourself as well. So keep watching. This man was Carl Rogers. And just so you know, I'm not actually talking out of my ass. I studied psychology for 2 years in school. And you don't need to know the entire history of Carl Rogers. Just know that he was really interested in psychology and he studied and worked really hard to become a psychologist in the early years of psychology. He developed a non-judgmental and empathetic approach to therapy. I learned about this particular subject while I was studying. There was basically this one concept in my books which was called Rapport Building. Basically, while you're interviewing a subject, as a therapist, when you're interviewing a subject, you're supposed to loosen them up a bit, make them more comfortable, make them feel like they're not being judged, even though they are. Because if the subject is not comfortable, if the subject feels nervous, or they're just not as loosened up, they're either going to answer impulsively, wrongly, or just straight up lie. None of which are good to have as a response when you're a therapist, because the analysis can be wrong. Basically, rapport building is something that you would do to just a very, very old friend that you're meeting again. But except of the person being an old friend, it's actually now a stranger or a patient or a subject. You ask them questions about their lives, you listen to whatever they're saying with interest, you seem interested, and you paraphrase and tell them what they just said to make sure that is what they meant and to let them know that you're actually listening. This is perhaps one of the most excellent tools that I've used in my life so far, that have improved my communication and public skills to another level. Just the other day I was in the cab and I was pretty bored, but I also wanted to create an example that I could give on this particular video. So I quickly assessed my cab driver. Without any hesitation, I just asked him if he's from UP, and he was. And I didn't have to say literally anything else. He just kept going on and on. People want to talk, people want to say stuff. You just have to initiate this conversation, you just have to break the ice. I didn't have anything else to say because that was the only thing I could assess from looking at him and from his just tonality, because I heard him talk to someone on a call. Later, I added that my mother is also from UP, and he went on for another 10-20 minutes. All I had to do was occasionally just say what he had just said with an expression of anger, frustration, with an expression of surprise. Just doing these subtle things, just making sure that the person knows that I'm listening, that I actually care about the conversation by paraphrasing what they had just said, making sure that they know I want to make sure I understand what they've just meant. It makes such a big difference because people don't actually do that. Most people that you ask any question, unless it's like completely private, like don't ask people the color of their underwear, that's fucking weird. But most of the times you ask someone anything, they would want to answer and they will keep going on and on. I later asked him about his political views, and he was anti-movie. Even though I don't share the same political views, which I will not discuss on this channel, I still went with it. I still agreed with everything that he was saying, and I seemed genuine. I sounded like I actually agree with him, because I didn't really want to argue with a stranger. There was no point. I literally only gave him 2 pieces of information. Actually, only one. I only told him that my mother is also from the UP. And he did the rest of the talking. Entire conversation, he held it. All I did was show some expressions. Show some expressions with the tone of my voice. Paraphrase what he had just said. Agree with him, say yes, yeah. That's all I had to do. Occasional nods. That held the entire conversation. The cab ride was almost an hour long, and he did all the talking. And at the end of our trip, right when we reached our destination, when we came back home, He actually looked at me and he shook my hand. He said, "Thank you, bhai." He said, "Thanks, brother. We don't really get customers like you anymore. People don't want to talk. People don't want to engage. They're all just busy on their fucking phone. And we can't use the phone. We can't do anything to pass the time while we're driving the cab. Thank you." I made a random stranger that I had nothing in common with, by the way, like me. And all I did, literally all I did, was listen to him, agree with him, and occasionally just paraphrase what he had just said. But if just for your convenience, just to make it even easier for you, I have created a checklist of things that you should follow if you also want to improve your people skills, if you also want to master the skill of making people like you, of having conversations, initiating conversations with strangers. Number one is assess your subject, just like I did. If I hadn't assessed it right, I could have just said that, like maybe he would have disagreed. Maybe I could have guessed that maybe you're from Punjab. He would have said no, I am from UP, and then I could have taken the conversation in a different direction. Then I could have said, oh, my mother is also from UP, and then he would have went on, and then he would go on and on. So there's no wrong answers, but you need to make some form of assessment. You need to make some sort of assumption about the person. That is how you initiate the conversation. Oh, you're here for the gym as well? Are you new here? Make some sort of assumption and say it out loud. That's step number one, right? Number two is make assumptions and ask questions that you think will get them talking. I asked him where he lives. I asked him if he was from the UP, and he was. From what he said about that conversation, I deduced that the person is rather political and he has a very specific sort of political views. And so I asked him if you like Modi or not. And sure enough, he said no. So from the conversation that you're already having, from the answers that the person is already giving, you need to squeeze that out and figure out another thing about the person, and then ask him question about that, because the two things are completely unrelated, right? I asked him where he is from, and he started talking about his political views, started talking about how bad the government is. So he was clearly like passionate about the subject. So if I just, it was this common sense to me that if I asked him about that particular subject, he will just keep talking and talking. Sure enough, he did. So similarly, make assumptions and ask questions that you think will get them talking. I could have asked him about his family as well. Do you have any kids? And most probably he would have answered. He would have started talking, and from that I could have taken the conversation in another direction. That is step number two. Step number three is show interest in what they're saying. Ask them to explain things more. The best question that I like to ask from any person in any scenario, in any conversation whatsoever, is why. Asking a person why is the easiest way to get them talking more. You can just, I call it juicing the conversation. The person has just said something about, maybe they just said they don't like Modi, right? I asked him, do you like Modi? He said no. I asked him why, and that got him talking. Otherwise, the conversation would have ended. Do you like Modi? No. Finished. That is how you ruin conversations. Never leave space in between, because often people are not comfortable with silence. Silence feels awkward. That's why people like to fill up silence while they're talking with filler words. Like, all these words are unnecessary, and these are just because you don't feel comfortable in silence. It's because you're not confident enough. While in a conversation, don't let a conversation run dry. And the way you let a conversation run dry is when you leave space between two questions. I just asked him, do you like Modi? He says no, and then there's silence in between. And then after 10-20 minutes, I asked him, why do you not like Modi? He probably wouldn't even remember saying no to the question I asked him before. So don't let there be a silence in between two sets of questions. Do you like Modi? No. Why? And then he carries on the conversation. Then he carries the entire conversation on his shoulders. It's like hot potato. Just keep asking questions. Don't be the center of attention. Have the last word always. That's point number three. Point number four is paraphrase what they've just said. Ask them if you got it right. Whenever you having a conversation and you don't know what to say, just paraphrase what they just said and ask them if you got it right. Most likely you wouldn't have gotten it right, and even if you have, they will appreciate the fact that you are listening and that you are actually making sure that you understand what they're saying. That tells them that you value their questions, you value their opinions, you value whatever it is that they're saying, and that will get them talking more. Maybe it'll get them to explain what you just said. Maybe it'll make them say more about the thing that they had just said. The possibilities are endless. And step number five is listen, listen, listen. All we need to do in order to extend the conversation is to never interrupt the person talking. If you want to get the person talking, ask them questions, paraphrase, do all of that stuff. But if you want to carry on a conversation, if you want to make sure that they have another conversation with you, if you want to make sure that they actually like you at the end of the conversation, don't disagree with them and listen. You do these two things, and at the end of the conversation, they most likely will tell you that they've never had a conversation like that. And all you literally did was just you gave them no piece of information. You just asked them questions and you paraphrased what they said, you agreed with everything that they said, and you listened. That is literally all you need to do in order to excel at any conversation whatsoever. It's that easy. You can do this with literally anybody of any age, of like you can have any sort of relationship with the person, and this entire framework will still work. This works because it gets people talking about themselves, and people love talking about themselves. That's all they ever want to do. So if you can get them to talk about themselves and make them talk about themselves more by asking them questions and actually listen and make sure they'll know that you're actually listening and valuing their opinions, they will like you at the end of the conversation. I've done this with a lot of girls as well, and I have most of the times gotten success from either getting them to be my friend or even making them like me. If you want my further involvement into teaching you how to build more efficient conversation skills or building more efficient public speaking skills, I have a free ebook that's completely free. It took me a couple of months to write that bitch, and it's completely free. It's a top link in the description. You don't even have to give me your email. Just go and check it out and read it very thoroughly. I teach everything you need to know in order to become a high value man, and I think it'll be very wonderful and very valuable for you. So go and check it out. It's a top link in the description. It's completely free. Again, I'm building a community of high value men or men who want to become high value. If you think you're one of them, subscribe to my channel right now so you can become part of this community, and I can help you in your own self improvement journey, videos just like this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I'll see you in the next video.